I saw the porcelain plate, wiped clean, in my husband's hand as he crept down the stairs at 1:00 a.m. That's when I knew. The chilling footsteps in the attic, the vanished spicy sausage. My husband, the literary darling, was keeping a secret, and it was alive, breathing, and hiding on the second floor of my house. No cap. Hey there, my peeps. Before we dive into this whole messy situation, and trust me, it's a fat piece of bacon of a story, I need you to do me a solid. Hit that like button right now. Seriously. Smash the subscribe button for this channel, The Golden Age Chronicles, and make sure you ring that little notification bell. You do not want to miss a single drop of this tea, especially when I get to the part where I serve up that piping hot revenge. IYKYK. Now, let's get into it. My name is Alara Vance, and I'm a seasoned old lady, or maybe you'd say a biddy, who had just officially retired. No more of that corporate grind. No more deadlines. No more trying to act all woke in pointless meetings. My new gig was simple. Live my best life in my big, gorgeous, but admittedly old, colonial house in Connecticut. My husband Ronan was a famous writer, a real goat in the literary scene. He was always in his bag, focused on his next manuscript, which meant I had quiet days, sometimes too quiet. I thought the change of pace would be great, you know? Less hustle, more chill. The weirdness started a couple of weeks after I hung up my corporate blazer for good. I'd wake up in the dead of night, not because of a bad dream, but because I'd hear noises. Faint ones at first, like a whisper of sound coming from the third floor, where the attic was. Ronan's family had owned this house for almost 90 years. It was full of history, dark wood, and creaky floorboards. The kind of place that always gave you a tiny bit of side-eye even when it was sunny out. I told Ronan about it one morning over breakfast. He was reading the newspaper, a distraction I'd grown used to. "Honey, I've been hearing things," I said, trying to keep my voice even, non-dramatic. From the attic. "It sounds like moving furniture. Heavy, slow." Ronan just flipped a page, barely giving me a glance. "It's the house, Alara. It's old, it settles. Maybe it's the raccoons. You're just hyper-aware now that you don't have work to distract you. You're being a little extra." He called me extra. After almost 40 years of marriage, that one felt mid, but I didn't want to fight about some spooky sounds. I decided to let him cook and not make a big deal of it. He promised he'd put some traps up by the attic door, and to my surprise, the sounds did stop. For a while, anyway. I shrugged it off. He was probably right. Raccoons, not ghosts. Then came the food incident, and this one was not so easy to explain away. I'm a foodie. I love flavor, and I'd picked up some artisanal spicy Italian sausage, the kind that makes your eyes water just looking at it. Ronan? Oh, that man is a complete wimp when it comes to spice. He claims even black pepper is too much. I put the sausage in the fridge, saving it for my weekly pasta night. The next morning, I opened the refrigerator, and the sausage was definitely shorter. A big chunk was gone, a jagged, sloppy cut across the end. Ronan was at his desk in the library on the second floor, tapping away at his new novel. I walked in, holding the package. "Ronan," I said, and my voice was tight. "Did you touch the spicy sausage?" He swiveled his chair around, gave me that patented, charming author smile, but something about it was crooked, like a photograph that had slipped in the frame. "Yeah, I had a little piece last night," he said, so casual. "It was actually pretty good." No cap, I stared at him. "You eating spicy sausage? The man who complains about the mild salsa at a Mexican restaurant?" He chuckled, a short, forced sound. "Come on, Alara, don't be so salty. I wanted to try something new. Don't make it a whole Roman Empire thing." I just shook my head, walking away. The doubt was a knot in my stomach. The missing sausage felt like it was living rent-free in my head. A few days later, the entire sausage was gone. Vanished. I checked the trash. I checked every corner. And I didn't say a word to Ronan. This was past hyper-aware. This was sus. The next real shock came on a Saturday. Ronan and I had gone to a friend's gallery opening in the city, an all-day affair. We got back late, exhausted. I went upstairs to our master bath to wash my face. As soon as I stepped onto the tile floor, I felt it. Cold and wet. The floor was completely soaked. Not just a few drops, but a huge puddle. and there was still condensation running down the glass shower door. I screamed for Ronan. He came running, his face a mask of annoyance. "What in the actual heck is the matter, Ilara?" he snapped. Look at the floor. It's soaking wet. Someone just took a shower." I pointed to the tub, where the drain was still glistening with moisture. Ronan looked around for a moment, then shrugged, the same easy dismissal that was starting to feel like a huge slap in the face. "It must be a leaky pipe. Or maybe the rain got in through the exhaust fan. It's an old house, babe. You're all shook over nothing." "Ronan, it didn't rain. The streets are dry," I argued. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose like I was the problem. "Fine. I'll call a plumber on Monday. Just get some towels and chill." He never called the plumber. And the next morning, the floor was perfectly dry. I checked the exhaust fan. Nothing. I checked the pipes under the sink. Nothing. The disconnected fragments. The footsteps. The missing food. The phantom shower were starting to form a clear, disturbing image in my mind, but I couldn't accept it. I told myself I was being Delulu, a lonely, retired old lady just trying to make drama where there was none. Then, about a week later, I was tidying Ronan's office, the library. That room was his fortress, a chaos of papers and books. I was dusting his massive mahogany desk when I knocked over a stack of drafts. As the papers hit the floor, a tiny hidden drawer, one I'd always thought was just a decorative detail, popped open with a tiny click. Inside, under a pile of yellowed notes, was a small dark brown worn leather notebook. It was vintage, not Ronan's style at all. He only used pristine white notebooks, if he even used paper. He did everything on his computer. My hand trembled as I picked it up and flipped it open. The handwriting was soft, elegant, definitely a woman's. The pages were filled with detailed story outlines, character descriptions, and plot ideas. And they weren't just any ideas. They were the bones, the very core of the stories in Ronan's most celebrated award-winning novels. A collaborator? A reader's gift? No, not the way this was written. This was the source. I quickly tucked the notebook away, pushing the drawer shut. I didn't need to ask Ronan. He would have some smooth, logical explanation that would make me doubt my own sanity. Not this time. This time I was going to find the truth myself. I was going to get the real tea. That night, sleep was impossible. My mind was racing, trying to connect the stolen ideas to the strange happenings in the house. The book, the wet floor, the phantom steps. Around 2:00 a.m., the silence of the house was broken by a soft, almost painful creak. I sat bolt upright. It came from the hallway, and my gut, that wise old gut, told me exactly what it was. I slid out of bed, creeping to the door. I didn't turn on the lights. I looked down the dark, long hallway and saw it. The small wooden door to the attic, the one Ronan and I never opened, was ajar. Just a crack. A line of blackness where the latch should have been set. I went back to our room and gently shook Ronan. "Stephen, wake up. The attic door is open." Wait, nope, gotta use the new name. "Ronan, wake up. The attic door is open." He groaned, annoyed, and staggered out of bed. He was not happy. He walked right to the door and shoved it shut with a thunk. "Ilara, look," he said, his voice grave and tired, as if I was being a difficult child. "The door is closed. The latch is in place. You're not sleeping well. You're seeing things that aren't there. You're being Delulu again. Go back to bed." I went back to bed, but my eyes were wide open. He had walked ahead of me. I had seen the door open. He had closed it before I could get there. For the first time, the doubt he usually manufactured didn't stick. In the days that followed, I became a silent spy. I noticed Ronan had picked up a new habit that was completely sus. Every night, around 10 p.m., when I was already in bed reading, he'd announce, "I gotta hit the library, Ilara. Manuscript is at a difficult part. You go to sleep first." I'd just nod and smile. A quiet, polite old lady. But the moment the library door closed, the invisible distance between us became a wall. One night, around 1 a.m., I woke up with a thirst that felt like a desert in my throat. The bed was empty. I reached out. The sheets were cold. Ronan was gone. My heart was doing a frantic little drum solo. I got up, grabbed my robe, and headed to the hallway. I checked the library. Empty. I checked the kitchen. Empty. Then, as I passed the stairs that led to the second floor, I heard a sound, faint but clear, a slow, careful footstep. I looked up. In the dim light of the second floor landing, I saw a silhouette. It was Ronan, barefoot, coming down the stairs, trying to be silent, and in his hand, he was carrying a small, gleaming porcelain plate. It was wiped clean, but I could still see the faint, dark red smear of spicy Italian sausage sauce on the rim. I froze on the bottom step, my breath catching in my throat like a fishhook. Seeing Ronan, my famous, charming, seemingly dedicated husband, sneaking down the stairs at 1 a.m, barefoot, holding that porcelain plate, it hit me with a force that made the air feel thin. It was all real. This wasn't me being Delulu. This was my life. He was so focused on being quiet that he didn't even notice me until he was halfway down the final flight. When he finally looked up and saw my silhouette standing there in the dim moonlight, he jumped like a startled cat. The plate clattered slightly against the mahogany banister. "Alara." "Holy moly, you scared the heck out of me!" he whispered, trying to force a look of annoyed surprise onto his face. That fake, crooked smile from before was back, but this time, it didn't quite reach his eyes. His eyes were wide, and in the dark, they looked completely shifty. I didn't move. I didn't even bother to soften my voice. "What are you doing, Ronan? Why are you sneaking down the stairs? And what is that?" I gestured to the plate in his hand. He quickly tucked the plate behind his back, a pathetic attempt to hide what I had already clearly seen. "Oh, this? It's nothing, babe. Just, I was thirsty. You know, working up in the library for so long makes you dry. I was just taking this plate down to the kitchen." "A plate? At 1 a.m, you went up to the second floor, and then snuck down with a dirty plate?" I countered, my voice low but sharp. "And why are you barefoot? You usually wear slippers to the kitchen." He took a step down, trying to close the distance between us, maybe hoping his proximity would diffuse the situation. "Come on, Alara, don't be so salty. I was having a late-night snack, okay? I grabbed a cookie before I went up to work, and I just forgot about the plate. I brought it down now so the maid doesn't have to clean it in the morning. I was trying to be thoughtful. Is that a crime? Thoughtful. Ronan hadn't done a chore in this house in about 20 years, and the stain I'd seen on the rim of that plate was definitely not cookie crumbs. It was that dark, oily, red residue from the spicy sausage, the one he claimed he couldn't stand, the one that had vanished entirely from the fridge. "Was it a spicy cookie, Ronan?" I asked, a chill running down my spine. This wasn't about food anymore. This was about lies. This was about a secret life happening under my nose. He laughed, a loud, unnatural sound that echoed a little in the silence. "You're seriously making a big deal out of a plate, Alara? You're being too extra. Go back to sleep. I'm going to throw this in the dishwasher and I'm hitting the hay." He hurried past me, but not before I caught a strange scent, not the expected smell of old books or pipe tobacco that usually clung to him. This was something different, something vaguely floral, like cheap soap, mixed with the stale air of a confined space. It was faint, but undeniably there. I followed him into the kitchen. He was already loading the plate into the dishwasher, moving quickly, almost frantically. "Don't bother, I'll do it," I said, reaching for the machine's door. No, I got it," he snapped, his hand covering the soap dispenser. He hit the start button immediately, the machine groaning to life. He was tripping, no doubt. I knew the plate was gone. The evidence was being scrubbed away. But I had my proof, the lie, the evasion, the desperate act of cleaning a plate at 1 a.m. "Ronan," I said, leaning against the counter, my arms crossed. "Tell me what's going on." He turned off the dishwasher, grabbed a glass of water, and took a long, exaggerated gulp. He suddenly looked exhausted, his shoulders slumped. "Look, Alara, I told you. I'm under a lot of pressure with this new book. It's draining me. You're just retired, you're not used to having all this quiet time, and you're getting stressed. It's making you overthink things. I'm fine. We're fine. Let's not make this awkward. Let's go to bed." He sounded sincere, but I remembered the woman's elegant handwriting in that hidden notebook. I remembered the ghostly figure our poor cleaner, Cassie, swore she saw on the second floor months ago, a woman in a white dress with messy hair. Cassie was not a girl who was easily shook, and Ronan had dismissed her too, with that same infuriating calmness. I nodded slowly. Okay, Ronan, you're right. I'm stressed. Good night. I watched him walk away. He was relieved. He thought he was in the clear, but I was just playing the part of the compliant, easily fooled wife. I went back upstairs, not to the bedroom, but to the second floor. I stood outside the library, Ronan's fortress. He was probably already back in bed, feigning sleep. The lock was simple, a skeleton key kind of deal. I didn't have a key, but I was old school. I kept a bobby pin tucked into the collar of my robe. It's amazing what you learn to do when you're married to a writer who forgets his keys every other day. It took me less than 3 minutes to pop the lock. I'm not a rookie, y'all. I slipped inside the library. The room was dark, the only light coming from the moon slicing through the long, narrow windows. I moved straight to the desk, pulled out the tiny hidden drawer, and retrieved the brown leather notebook. I flipped through the pages, focusing now on the dates. They weren't explicitly dated, but some of the fragments had little timestamps. Tuesday night, late October. What I noticed, and what made my blood run cold, was that the ideas written in this elegant hand perfectly mirrored the timelines of Ronan's most successful novels he claimed to have spent years laboring over. This woman was the source. This woman was his ghostwriter, but not one he was paying. I remembered the floral scent on Ronan. I remembered the creaking footsteps from the attic. And I connected the attic to the library. There was a small, almost invisible door built into the wall of the library, disguised to look like another section of shelves, that led to a tiny, unused storage space. It was dark, dusty, and mostly forgotten. I pushed on the shelf, and it swung open with a quiet thwick. The scent was immediately stronger here. Cheap soap, old paper, and something else. Something human. I stepped inside the storage space and felt along the wall for a light switch. My hand found a pull cord. I yanked it, and a dim, weak bulb flickered on, barely chasing away the gloom. The room was almost empty, save for a few boxes. But in the corner I saw it, a stack of clean folded towels, a half-empty bar of soap wrapped in plastic, a small empty box of that same spicy sausage I'd bought, and a tattered old white dress, the kind Cassie had described, hanging on a hook. My eyes followed a trail of tiny scuff marks on the floor, leading me to a staircase I hadn't known existed. It was a narrow, steep, wooden ladder-like stairwell, hidden in the wall, leading straight up into the darkness. The attic, holy smokes. This wasn't an affair. This wasn't a ghost. This was a prisoner. A hostage situation, perhaps. The steps Ronan and I heard weren't mice. They were her. The wet bathroom floor. She was sneaking down to bathe when we were gone. The disappearing sausage? He was feeding her. I didn't dare go up those stairs. I didn't want to alert whoever was up there that I knew. I slipped out of the storage room, closing the secret door tightly. I put the notebook back in its hidden spot and closed the library door. My mind was racing, trying to figure out how to handle this. I walked back to the master bedroom. Ronan was asleep, or at least he was doing a really darn good job of pretending. His breathing was deep and even. I got back into bed, but my body was rigid. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about the woman, the author, the one who was writing the words that made my husband rich and famous, the one who was trapped right above us. I thought about calling the police, but I realized I had no concrete proof that wouldn't make me look like a maniac in the morning. An old woman with a hunch and a bobby pin used to pick her husband's office lock. They'd laugh me out of the precinct. I needed to gather hard evidence. I needed to know who she was and how long she'd been up there. I spent the next day behaving like the perfect, slightly airheaded, recently retired wife. I made Ronan his favorite breakfast. I talked about gardening. I even suggested we watch a movie he liked. I was acting all cutesy, but inside, I was a coiled spring. That afternoon, Ronan had an important meeting with his editor. He was going to be gone for at least 6 hours. My window of opportunity. As soon as his car was out of the driveway, I ran upstairs. I grabbed a pair of latex gloves from the utility closet. I told you. I was not going to be a rookie about this, and headed straight for the library. I opened the secret door, and this time I started to climb the ladder. The air got thicker and colder as I ascended, heavy with the smell of dust and old wood. When I reached the top, I saw a small makeshift door leading into the attic. It wasn't latched. I pushed it open slowly, quietly. The attic was huge and dark, illuminated only by a single small grime-covered window at one end. And in the center of the vast, dusty space, a small area had been partitioned off with hanging sheets and blankets, a room within a room. I cautiously approached the partition, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I paused, taking a deep breath. "Hello?" I whispered. "Is anyone here?" Silence. I pushed aside the blanket. The small space was clearly a living area. There was a thin mattress on the floor, a single shelf of books, a water bottle, and a stack of paper and pencils, all the tools of a writer. But the room was empty. The woman was gone. My eyes scanned the floor, and I saw a small, hastily scribbled note pinned to the mattress with a thumbtack. I pulled it off and read the elegant handwriting from the notebook. "He knew you would look. He took me. I am safe. I am with him. Please do not call the police. I need you to know the truth. Look for the name Anya." The note felt fragile in my gloved hand, but the word Anya was carved into my brain like a piece of granite. He knew you would look. He took me. That little scrap of paper was the final, terrifying piece of proof. My husband, the beloved author. Ronan Vance wasn't just having an affair or a midlife crisis. He was running a straight-up hostage situation, turning his famous library into a prison and his attic into a writing den for a woman named Anya. I stood there for a good 5 minutes, just staring at the empty space, trying to get my bearings. The fact that he had moved her, that he anticipated my snooping, meant Ronan was not only a liar, but a calculated predator. This wasn't some sudden bonkers development. This had been planned. I folded the note and carefully tucked it into the pocket of my robe, making sure to keep those latex gloves on. No cap, I wasn't leaving any of my fingerprints in this sketchy space. I spent the next hour meticulously searching the attic living area. My goal was to find out who Anya was, and what Ronan's connection to her might be. I sifted through the small stack of books. Most were classics, but there was one small, cheap paperback that caught my eye. It was an advanced copy of a very minor novel from about 10 years ago, an author I'd never heard of. Inside the cover, written in that elegant, familiar script, were the words, "To my dear Anya, may this be the start of everything. With love, R.R. Ronan." So he knew her back then, before he became the GOAT of bestsellers. I quickly checked the shelf of writing supplies. Among the pencils and erasers, I found a small, worn photograph tucked inside a pencil box. It was a picture of a young woman, maybe in her early 20s, with bright, creative eyes and a warm, slightly mischievous smile. She had the same fine, delicate features suggested by the handwriting. This had to be Anya. Beneath the mattress, I found a small, dusty duffel bag containing a few items, a worn ID card, a few simple clothes, and a passport. The ID confirmed her name, Anya Petrova, a Russian national with a student visa that had expired almost 10 years ago. Her address? An apartment building in New York City, long since converted to condos. The dates on the documents, the expired visa, the old advanced copy, all pointed to a time about a decade ago, right before Ronan's career absolutely exploded. Before his first major bestseller, the one that made us enough money to buy this big old house outright. A wave of nausea hit me. All his success, all his awards, all the wealth and fame we had enjoyed for the last 10 years, it was all built on Anya's talent. He didn't just meet her. He had enslaved her, physically and literally, to be his personal, secret ghostwriter. The thought made me feel so sick I had to lean against the rough wood wall. I put everything, the ID, the photo, the paperback, into the duffel bag. I zipped it up and put it under my robe. The physical evidence was secured. I quietly climbed back down the ladder, making sure the secret door in the library was shut tight. I used a cloth to wipe down the handle on the inside, just in case. Back in the safety of the master bedroom, I sat down and started thinking, trying to connect the dots. Ronan had gone to New York 10 years ago, ostensibly for a research fellowship at Columbia University. He came back 8 months later with the finished manuscript for The Broken Window, the novel that shot him to stardom. He always claimed that time in the city, the solitude, the pressure, was what sparked his genius. But now I knew the truth. He found Anya, a struggling, young, probably undocumented writer. He probably promised her the world, collaboration, fame, a percentage. Then he brought her back here, locked her up, and stole her life's work, using his smooth talk and his power to keep her silent. He was absolutely vile. I needed to find out where he had taken her now. The note said, "I am with him. I am safe." I didn't believe the safe part for a second. That was probably part of whatever lie Ronan was feeding her. He had to have moved her to a secret location, somewhere he could keep her locked up and still squeeze out his next bestseller. My only lead was Ronan's routines. He would be home late that night, tired from his meeting. I needed to act while he was distracted. That evening, I played the part of the tired, slightly cranky wife flawlessly. "Ronan," I said as he walked through the door, "I had a terrible day. My back is killing me. I'm hitting the sheets early and I'm taking the sleeping pills Dr. Jones prescribed. You're on your own for dinner. I'm completely wiped." He smiled that crooked, relieved smile, completely oblivious. "Sounds good, Alara. You need to relax. You've been way too wound up lately." He looked like a man who had successfully navigated a major crisis. He thought he was in the clear. As if. I took a fake sleeping pill, just a vitamin I'd swapped out, and pretended to fall asleep the moment my head hit the pillow. I could feel Ronan watching me for a few minutes, making sure I was really out. Then, I heard the telltale sounds, the soft snick of the library door closing, followed by the faint hum of his computer turning on. He was back to work, probably, trying to outline the next chapter from Anya's stolen ideas. Around midnight, I slowly opened my eyes. I waited. The sound of his typing was steady, relentless. I needed to get into his computer, his phone, his email, wherever he was communicating about her new location. I slipped out of bed and crept to the hallway. This time, I didn't go to the library. I went to the back hall, where Ronan kept his old wooden filing cabinet. He was a writer, an old-school journalist at heart. He kept everything in paper form, too. I used another bobby pin. Honestly, every woman should know how to pick a lock, and the bottom drawer slid open. I pulled out his checkbook, his banking statements, and his property tax documents. And there it was, a piece of paper sticking out from a folder marked Investments. It was a utility bill for a small, isolated property 10 miles outside of town, a property I knew nothing about. It was a tiny cabin by the lake. The bill was addressed to R. Vance, LLC, Bingo. He had bought a secondary property under a business name to hide it from me. A perfect, secluded, non-existent place to keep his prisoner. This was where he had taken Anya. I quickly photographed the address and the details on the bill with my phone. I put everything back perfectly, locked the cabinet, and crept back to bed. The faint, rhythmic sound of Ronan's typing continued from the library. Lying in the dark, I felt a calm I hadn't experienced since this nightmare began. My fear was gone, replaced by a cold, surgical focus. My husband, the celebrated author, was a kidnapper and a thief. He stole a woman's entire life to fund our comfortable retirement. I knew I couldn't call the police yet. If I called the police, now Ronan, with his contacts and his smooth talk, would get ahead of the story. He would claim I was the delusional one, the extra wife who was seeing things. And he would use my discovery of the attic room as proof of my instability. He was lame, but he was smart. No, I wasn't just going to get justice. I was going to get revenge. The kind of revenge that would be a story in itself. The kind of story that would make his next book. The one he planned to steal from Anya. The absolute final one. The first step was to get eyes on the cabin. I had the address. Tomorrow, I would take a little drive. I looked over at Ronan, who was now just a darker shape in the doorway of the library, a literary genius built on stolen talent and lies. I smiled in the darkness. He thought I was asleep and clueless. He was about to learn that you never, ever mess with a retired, bored, and incredibly pissed off old lady. I was about to go full savage. The next morning, I was a woman on a mission. No more playing the extra airheaded wife. Ronan woke up, oblivious, still smug from thinking he'd successfully outmaneuvered me and relocated his captive. I made sure to be overly cheerful, asking him about his meeting yesterday, feeding him some line about how his editor must be tripping to give him so many deadlines. I needed him to believe I was firmly back in my chilled-out retiree role. After he left for his morning jog, I grabbed the car keys, the duffel bag with Anya's IDs, and the cabin address. My body might be old school, but my focus was straight fire. The address led me about 20 minutes outside of town, down a winding, unpaved road that was seriously sketchy. The trees were dense, and the only signs of life were the occasional deer. Ronan had picked the perfect, isolated spot. The cabin itself was tiny, a beat-up wooden shack by a small, murky lake. It looked exactly like the kind of place a writer would go to find inspiration, or, in Ronan's case, to keep a creative genius locked up and ghostwriting his next meal ticket. I parked my SUV deep in the woods, making sure it was completely hidden from the cabin's one window. I approached on foot, moving slowly, keeping low. I've watched enough true crime documentaries and cop dramas to know how to do basic recon. The cabin was silent. No lights. The windows were small and grimy, but I could just make out a few details inside. A rickety table, a chair, and a single cot. The air around the place felt heavy, like a bad secret clinging to the pine needles. I cautiously circled the cabin. There were no cameras, which was a bonus. The back door, a rusted metal thing, looked like it was secured with a heavy-duty padlock. Ronan was definitely not taking any chances this time. I didn't try to go in. My goal right now was information, not a rescue mission that could go sideways. I needed to know Ronan's routine here. I found a perfect vantage point in a clump of low bushes and settled in to wait. I was prepared to stay there all day. I had brought water, snacks, and a pair of cheap binoculars. I was going full savage mode, and nobody was going to stop me. About 3 hours later, a battered old truck pulled up. Not Ronan's usual fancy European sedan, but a plain, dull-colored pickup. It was Ronan. He must have borrowed it or bought it specifically for these trips. Further proof that this whole operation was highly calculated. He got out of the truck, carrying a plastic grocery bag and a small leather briefcase. He walked straight to the back door, unlocked the heavy padlock with a key he pulled from his pocket, and disappeared inside. I watched through the binoculars, waiting. About 20 minutes later, he came back out, locked the door again, and drove away. He was in and out, fast, efficient. He was delivering food and probably collecting the day's work from Anya. A transaction, not a relationship. This routine gave me everything I needed. He only visited once a day, in the late morning, and he didn't stay long. I waited another hour to be absolutely sure he wasn't coming back. Then I drove back home. The moment I stepped inside my beautiful Bouget house, I felt a deep, cold rage. The house was spotless. My life was comfortable, and it was all paid for by Ronan's cruelty and Anya's stolen genius. My revenge had to be surgical. I needed to destroy his career, expose his crime, and free Anya. All without him seeing me coming. I knew Ronan. His public image as the sensitive, deep-thinking author was his lifeblood. Losing that would hurt him more than any jail time. Step 1. The setup. I needed a distraction. Something so big and so public that it would put him completely off his game. I went straight to my computer. I still had access to all his social media and his author website accounts. He was a boomer about passwords, bless his heart. His password was his first novel's title, all lowercase. Lame. I spent the next few hours crafting a carefully worded public post. It wasn't a confession. It was a cry for help, from Ronan's point of view. I posted it to his author Facebook page, his official Twitter, and his personal website's blog. The message was dramatic, seemingly written in a moment of emotional breakdown. It read, "I can't do this anymore. The pressure, the expectations, the constant need to create the next great novel. It's crushing me. I have a secret. A huge, life-altering secret that I've kept hidden in the walls of my success for too long. I can't write another word until I confess. The truth about the broken window and everything that followed will be revealed. My sanity is gone. I'm going to disappear for a few days to find my center. Forgive me. I need to get well. I need to be honest. The burden is simply too much. I'll be back when I'm ready to tell you everything." I finished the post with a cryptic emoji, a single dark lock. The whole thing was perfectly crafted. It sounded like a massive mental breakdown leading to a confession of plagiarism or artistic fraud. His fans would be shook. His publisher would be losing it. And Ronan would have his focus completely pulled away from the cabin and Anya. I watched the initial reactions flood in. Thousands of comments. "Praying for you, Ronan. It's okay, take your time. What's the secret?" The post went viral. When Ronan came home that evening, he was already on edge. His phone was ringing off the hook. His agent, his publisher, his best friend. He looked frantic. "Alara, did you see my social media?
Someone hacked me!
Or maybe I sleep posted. What is this thing I wrote? What confession? What secret?" he demanded, pacing the living room like a caged animal. I looked at him with wide, innocent eyes, the picture of a concerned, if slightly ditzy wife. "Oh, Ronan, I saw. It's terrible. Are you okay? You must be so stressed, honey. You've been working so hard. Maybe you did write it in your sleep. It sounds like a breakdown, doesn't it? Don't worry. I told everyone you were just having an intense moment and you need to chill." I played my part perfectly, reinforcing the narrative of a mental health crisis. He was too panicked and overwhelmed by the explosion of public attention to suspect me. His career, his entire Bouget existence was suddenly hanging by a thread. He couldn't think about the cabin, not with this firestorm raging. I had him where I wanted him, completely distracted, completely exposed to the public, and entirely focused on damage control. The stage was set. Tomorrow, while he was scrambling to clean up the mess I had made, I would go back to that cabin, and I would execute the real plan. I would free Anya, and then I would deliver the final crushing blow that would expose him for the monster he truly was. I was ready to go beast mode. The frenzy surrounding Ronan's breakdown post was absolute chaos. His phone didn't stop buzzing for even a second. Agents, publishers, media outlets, everyone wanted to know about the life-altering secret he promised to reveal. This was perfect. He was totally tripping, running around the house, shouting into his phone, and canceling every appointment to deal with the firestorm I had created. He couldn't spare a single thought for Anya. I knew this was my only window. Announced to Ronan that I was going to visit my cousin 10 miles away for the whole day because his panic attack was making me stressed out. He barely registered it, just waving me away while furiously typing a damage control email, as if. I changed into sturdy clothes, tucked the duffel bag with Anya's documents under my seat, and grabbed my tools. I'm an old lady, but I'm not weak. I had a small crowbar, bought specifically for this mission, no cap, and a heavy-duty pair of bolt cutters. If the lock was too big, I'd cut the hinges. I was ready to go beast mode. I drove the SUV back down that sketchy dirt road to the cabin. I parked exactly where I had the day before and approached the shack with a deep, silent focus. The cabin was silent, completely, disturbingly silent. I moved to the back door, where the heavy steel padlock hung. I quickly realized the bolt cutters weren't going to work. The shackle was too thick. Time for the crowbar. I wedged the tip of the crowbar into the seam of the rusted metal door, right above the lock mechanism. I braced my feet, took a deep breath, and shoved. The old wood groaned and splintered, but the lock held. I tried again, putting all my weight into it. With a deafening crack and a tearing sound of ripping metal, the door frame gave way, the deadbolt tearing out of the wood. I shoved the door open and rushed inside. The cabin was dark and smelled strongly of stale air and fear. Anya was sitting on the cot, huddled under a thin blanket, her eyes wide with terror. She was even thinner than I imagined. "Anya, it's okay. I'm Alara, Ronan's wife," I whispered, holding up my empty hand so she wouldn't panic. She stared at me, her eyes darting to the broken door, then back to my face. "Alara, she croaked, her voice dry and unused. He's busy right now. He thinks his career is over. I'm here to help you, I said quickly. We have to be fast. We're getting you out of here and then we're ending him. I know everything, honey. About the books, the attic, all of it. You wrote them, didn't you? The broken window? A single silent tear tracked down her dusty cheek. She simply nodded. I know, I said gently. We'll fix it. Let's go. I helped her up. She was weak, low-key stumbling, but she had a fire in her eyes. I could see the writer, the intelligent woman, under the fear. We need one last thing, I told her, gesturing to the small wooden table where she had been working. Any papers? Any contracts? Anything that connects you to his work here? She pointed to the leather briefcase Ronan had brought yesterday, which was tucked under the cot. He made me sign a non-disclosure agreement this morning. It's in there. He was so angry about his social media post he just needed the paper signed. A non-disclosure agreement? That Ronan made his prisoner sign? Vile. I opened the briefcase. Inside was a stack of clean manuscript pages. His next supposed novel, already a quarter written. And on top was a document. A simple but legally sound NDA that forced Anya to remain silent forever in exchange for $1, a signed copy of the final novel, and freedom. He didn't even bother to make the terms look real. But the most important thing? The final page of the NDA had Ronan Vance's signature and Anya Petrova's signature on it, both witnessed by a notary Ronan must have bribed. This document, intended to silence her, proved that Ronan knew Anya, that he signed a contract with her, and that he used the name R. Vance LLC to do it. It was the smoking gun. I slipped the NDA and a few pages of the manuscript into the duffel bag, right next to her old ID. Come on, we're dipping out, I told her. We got into my SUV. Anya was pale but determined. As I drove back toward town, I handed her the duffel bag. This is your life, Anya. Your ID, your passport, your evidence, I said. We are not going to the police yet. Ronan would lawyer up, spin the story, and have you deported. I have a better idea. I have a friend, a very trusted friend, Elena, who runs a domestic violence shelter 2 hours away. She is solid. She will get you legal counsel, safe harbor, and most importantly, she will protect your documents. Anya gripped the bag tightly. Thank you, Alara, but why? He's your husband. He stole 10 years of your life and built his fame on your talent, I said, my voice hardening. He stole my trust and made a fool of me. My retirement fund, my beautiful house, it's all dirty money now. I am not letting him get away with this. I'm an old lady with nothing but time, money, and a serious amount of fury. You and I, honey, we are going to serve up the greatest literary scandal this country has ever seen. I dropped Anya off at a remote, prearranged meeting spot near a rest stop. Elena, a kind woman with a serious face, was waiting. I watched as Anya hugged her tightly, already looking a little safer. Keep her safe. Elena, I'll call you as soon as the mic drop happens, I told my friend. Go get him. Alara, I always knew you were full savage, Elena replied, giving me a knowing look. I drove back home. Ronan was still pacing, still on the phone. The house was a mess of papers and coffee cups. He didn't even notice I was gone all day. Alara, where have you been? I've been trying to get a hold of the lawyer all day. They want to talk about the confession. My publicist thinks I need to check into a retreat to make the story look real. I'm completely wiped, he ranted. Oh, poor honey, I cooed, giving him a gentle, completely fake hug. I was just at the store getting some chamomile tea. I think you need a nice, quiet dinner. How about I make your favorite, that nice, easy, bland chicken and rice? You sit, you relax. Let me take care of you, I smiled. He bought it. He was too stressed to question anything. As I walked toward the kitchen, my mind was racing. The NDA was safe. Anya was safe. Ronan was distracted. Now for the final act. The revenge wasn't just about freeing Anya. It was about destroying the very foundation of his stolen fame, and I knew exactly how to do it. I had Ronan exactly where I wanted him. Comfortable, stressed, and completely blind to the storm I was brewing. He was so busy trying to manage the public fallout from his fake confession that he practically melted into the couch when I offered to make him dinner. He ate his bland chicken and rice, complained about his publisher being so extra, and eventually fell asleep on the sofa, clutching his phone like a security blanket. This was my moment. The final act. I went straight to the library. The door was unlocked. He hadn't even bothered to close it properly in his exhaustion. I sat down at his massive mahogany desk, the one built on Anya's stolen dreams, and booted up his computer. My first task was accessing his email. He was a creature of habit. His password was still the name of his first real novel, Lame. I found the email chain with his agent and publisher. They were demanding he issue a statement, suggesting he check into a wellness retreat, anything to make the breakdown look real. I didn't send a statement. I sent a package. I logged into his private email and composed one final, devastating email. The subject line was simply, "The confession you demanded." I attached 3 documents: Anya Petrova's expired student visa and passport photo, proof of her identity and vulnerable status 10 years ago, the non-disclosure agreement, NDA, the one Ronan had Anya sign the day before, complete with both their signatures, proving a financial and contractual relationship with the captive author. A meticulously detailed, side-by-side comparison of Chapter 1 of Anya's original manuscript fragments, From the Attic, and Chapter 1 of Ronan's best-selling novel, The Broken Window. The parallels were not subtle. They were identical, word for word. The body of the email was short and brutal. It went to his agent, his publisher's CEO, the 2 largest national book reviewers, and a handful of the most famous literary journalists in the country, all easily found in his contact list. To whom it may concern, I'm not Ronan Vance. I am the woman who was forced to be his ghostwriter for the last 10 years. He stole my life, my freedom, and my work, starting with The Broken Window. He kept me locked in the attic, and recently in a remote cabin. My name is Anya Petrova. Ronan's wife, Alara Vance, has helped me escape. I am now in a safe place with all the evidence. The attached documents prove I am the true author, and that Ronan Vance is a thief and a kidnapper. The full story of my captivity and how Ronan built his entire bougie career on my stolen talent will be released publicly tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. East. The NDA he forced me to sign will not save him. You can choose to publish the truth now, or you can watch your company burn with his reputation when the news breaks. No cap. The truth is always full savage. I hit send. The feeling was electric. It wasn't just a hit. It was a detonation. Next, I went to his desk drawer and found his spare house keys and the key to his safe deposit box. I had one more essential piece of evidence to secure. I quietly slipped out of the house. Ronan was still snoring softly on the sofa. My destination was the bank. I used his safe deposit box key. Inside was a neatly bound collection of papers. The original handwritten manuscripts of his 4 best-selling novels, all in Anya's elegant hand. He had kept them as trophies. I photographed every single page and then took the manuscripts themselves. Lame move, Ronan. By the time the first gray light of dawn was filtering through the kitchen window, I was back. I put the safe deposit key and house keys back where they belonged. I was leaving no trace of my actions, except for the massive, career-ending email I had launched into the literary world. I went upstairs, changed into a crisp white blouse and slacks, and sat down in the living room with a cup of coffee, waiting. I was calm. The job was almost done. Around 7:30 a.m., Ronan finally staggered awake. He looked absolutely wiped. He grabbed his phone and immediately started scrolling through the endless notifications. His eyes widened. His face went from pale to a dangerous shade of red. He let out a primal guttural roar. Alara! Alara, did you see this? Did you see the emails? The attachments? Someone is framing me! They're saying I kidnapped a woman named Anya. They're saying The Broken Window is plagiarized. They're using your name. He was absolutely frantic, running his hands through his messy hair. He looked desperate, pathetic. My name, Ronan? I asked, taking a slow sip of my coffee. How interesting. Who would ever believe that? Everyone. My publisher is demanding a meeting. My agent quit! Who is this, Anya? It's a complete lie. It's bonkers. Is it, Ronan? I asked, finally putting my coffee cup down. I stood up, crossing the room to stand directly in front of him. I found her, Ronan, 10 years ago, in your library, in the attic, and in that awful little cabin you bought with your stolen money. His face drained of all color. He realized it wasn't a hack. It was me, you old lady. You set this up. You saw the post and you went full savage. You ruined me. he screamed, lunging toward me. I didn't flinch. I just pointed my finger at the door. Too late, Ronan. I freed Anya yesterday. She is safe, and the entire literary world has the original manuscripts in her handwriting, the NDA with your signature, and her ID. You didn't just steal her words. You stole her life. I won't let you steal one more day. The doorbell rang, loudly. Then the phone began to ring off the hook again. Then the doorbell again. 2 men in suits holding notebooks stood on the porch. The literary journalists had arrived. They're here for the truth, Ronan, I said, a cold, hard smile finally touching my lips. The confession you promised. You can hide in the library, or you can face the consequences of being a lame fraud and a monster. Just then, 2 police cruisers turned onto our driveway, their lights flashing silently. Anya's friends at the shelter hadn't been idle. They had contacted the authorities, using the solid proof I gave them. Ronan looked from the window to me, the retired, easily fooled wife. He realized he had fatally underestimated me. He had focused on silencing his victim and forgetting his wife, and in doing so, he allowed his empire to be toppled by the very person he thought was clueless. He was arrested that morning, a famous author escorted away in handcuffs, his whole career dissolving with every flashbulb. I watched him go, then turned and walked back into the silent house. It was still beautiful, but now, the money financing it would be seized by the courts. I didn't care. I pulled out my phone and texted Elena. Mission complete. Mic drop achieved. Tell Anya the truth is out there. I went upstairs to the library, looked at the desk, and smiled. The house was finally quiet, the air finally clean. My revenge was complete. The old lady had won.